Oops. Okay, recording is on. We're good. Okay. Due to COVID-19, we have switched to a virtual format. We have our chat disabled due to open meeting law. You know, I think everyone here on the call is familiar with Zoom, but if you need help with that, just raise your hand. Let's see. So we have here myself, Sherry Jimenez. I'm the co-president. What was it? My role is the co-chair of this subcommittee, along with Olga Flores. Can you Olga Flores present? Can you
present? Sorry.
I'll do the roll call. We also have Jim Toffel present. And then we have our ex officio members with us, Marcos Ismael.
Hello, everybody.
And Betty Viegas. Betty, are you on the line? Betty?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, great. Testing. All right. We've got everybody. And then we have our city staff with us, helping us. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Megan, you're also ex officio, right? Correct? Sorry, I missed you. You were muted. Sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Yes, I believe so. Okay,
present. Megan is also present with us. And I think I got everybody except for Joe, a member of the audience. So we'll move on to the next call to the audience. This is the time when any member of the public may address the Commission on Equitable Housing and Development. Due to time constraints, the total time allocated for this is 15 minutes. Individuals are allowed 3 minutes each. Due to open meeting law, Commission members cannot discuss topics that are not on the agenda. Items brought up by the public may be considered as an agenda item for a future meeting. Do we have anyone from the public who wants to speak? All right. Hearing none, we'll move on to our next agenda item, proposed zoning changes. Is this going to be an update from you?
I'll take it real quick. Corin wasn't able to join, so she just wanted me to let you guys know that the Planning Commission recommended approval of the commercial parking code changes, and it's going to be going in front of Mayor and Council on April 19th. It is probably going to happen that they will direct staff to look at additional by right parking reductions in affordable housing developments. So that is definitely moving forward, and we'll keep you posted once council directs staff to take a look at that. We'll probably do some work and then bring it back and work with all of you on what that means. And Anne, do you have other things you'd like to add?
I mean, so here's my understanding that they were talking specifically about the change to have it be an individualized parking plan. The planning commission said, yeah, great, but we also think you need to make this by right to make it easier. And so I say this because theoretically, if the subcommittee so chooses, you could also say you would recommend mayor and council do look at adding a by right for affordable housing development rather than have to go through the individualized parking plan. And if I think since you're meeting today, that can be agendized on the full commission meeting next week. And so theoretically, staff could say both the Planning Commission and the Commission on Equitable Housing and Development recommend this if you so choose.
Yeah, I think that's a great suggestion. Should we move on that now? Can I get a motion from? I have a hand. Do y'all mind if I take the question from Joe?
when we talked about that change last time, I believe Corin said there really wasn't any data we had that affordable housing required less parking, and that kind of led me to believe at least that it might be a good idea to look at those on a case-by-case basis, and that was all that was going to be done, so that they really could be examined case by case and not have it be by right. It seems like a change that doesn't really have substance behind it.
Wow.
Danielle is on the wrong meeting.
I'm sorry. So what was that, Anne? You cut out for me.
Yeah, sorry. I just noticed somebody's on the Teams meeting.
I can
so
go grab her.
One thing I'll say is I looks like David wants to talk. At the last meeting, Gorman did provide some data for their projects, and I think we could collect more data. And I think that if mayor and council direct staff to look at by right, there'll still be a process and things that we would have to go through. But I think that's a valid question, Joe.
Go ahead, David.
I would very, very strongly oppose doing it on a case-by-case basis. Planning as a developer, certainty is very important. When we're planning a project, we need to know what the rules are, and to have it be on an ad hoc case-by-case basis makes it very difficult. Certainly, you know, I've been working in the affordable housing realm for more than 30 years. And, you know, it's just the truth. It's just the fact that lower income people don't have the cars that suburban and more upscale, excluding, you know, downtown, highly concentrated properties in, you know, Seattle, Los Angeles, things like that. But there's just years and years and years of practical experience to support the lower income people by virtue of the fact that they don't have a lot of money, have fewer cars. And certainly the project we just opened, 40 units, could have been bigger if we did not have the parking requirements that the city imposes. The project we're about to start on, even with parking reductions that we've been able to get so far, is probably going to be seriously overparked, and we could probably put more units on it than we're allowed to, again, even with parking reductions. I would be very, very strongly opposed to doing it on an ad hoc basis.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that I think that the more, and that's my whole problem right now with whatever wiggle room that's been written into the UDC so far is not flexible enough. Like even the flexible lot development option, does anyone actually use that? Does that like ever get used? Because again, the final determination is by, you know, a few people in a back room. It's not anything by right. So it makes any of those tools extremely difficult to use, because you can't waste your time going through an additional 2 to 3 month process, not knowing for certain at the end whether or not you're going to be approved. I mean, no developer would put themselves at risk like that. So it doesn't make any, and then, you know, so there's not very much flexibility built into the code as it is, and what little there isn't very certain. And I think that's why those tools don't get utilized. I have that on my list to talk about later, the flexible lot development option. Sarah, I'm hoping you can help shed some light on that, because that was supposed to be one of the tools that helps affordable housing developers, and I don't think it actually does, because of these same things we're talking about. Whatever gets written into the code needs to be absolutely certain, guaranteed that you're going to get whatever reduction it is, and those have been already written in. You know, there are some that 20% parking reduction you can count on by providing X amount of parking spots or X bike parking, and you know, those things are written very well and are getting used now because, again, there's certainty. But I do, you know, and as far as the studies, I think that the studies, you know, especially for like senior housing developments, I mean, there's so many different categories of housing developments where the sites are seriously overparked. And are we prioritizing people or are we prioritizing cars? I'd rather prioritize people. But anyways, so yeah, thank you, David, for that. Let's see. Let's move on to the next.
Jim has his hand up.
Oh, okay, yeah, go ahead, Jim. Sorry about that.
Thanks. I guess two things. I think Jason Heisey is with us now. And then second, it's more of a question just for my own notification. How are parking counts defined currently? Is it clear on the code? Is it, you know, for like a 1-bedroom, 1.5 spaces, 2-bedroom, 2 spaces, 3-bedroom, 2.5 spaces? Is that how the code is currently written for Tucson? And so I think it's important to be specific in terms of what we think would be, you know, reasonable for an affordable housing project. So are we asking for a 50% reduction, 30% reduction? You know, I think the more specific we are in our recommendations, I think the better. Otherwise, you know, who knows what the final result's going to be.
And one, I'm going to jump in and say, so I think, because this is, I think, a lot of qualifiers here. What's going to go to mayor and council is about the process that already happened regarding the individualized parking plan. I think having there just be a general sentiment of support to ask staff to look at a reduction by right. I think there will be time to nail down what specifically you'd want. Right now, there is a by right reduction for older adult and persons with disabilities to 0.75 parking spots per unit. And that is the exact number Gorman gave for what they're seeing across their affordable housing project citywide or statewide. So I think there would be time to nail out those details later, but just that's how I understand what the process is going to look like.
Okay, great. So then at this point, it doesn't seem like we necessarily need to make a motion, but what would be helpful to take, I guess, process-wise to mayor and council?
So what planning commission did, they did make a motion saying, great, we want to support this, and we want staff to go back and look at doing a reduction by right for any affordable housing project. So I think if the Commission on Equitable Housing and Development so chooses, being able to say the Planning Commission and this commission support this as a notion could be helpful.
And I think for today, it could be a part of, if you guys end up discussing in the other homework section, it could be included in what you take to the full commission next week. And then that would be where the you know, actual motion happens that would move it forward for the whole commission. But it could be a part of what you guys want to take as far as your homework goes and your action items that you want to come to today to the larger commission next week.
Okay, great. So maybe we'll just wait to make one larger motion after we vet through this and other zoning items. Does that sound good to everybody? Okay. So moving forward, the next one was our strategic plan. So yeah, we're just diving right into the homework. And there's two sub items here. Affordable and Section 8 housing inventory ideas. People are timing out of voucher program because they can't find anywhere to live, and discussing a possible development that has only affordable housing in it. involving major investments like Freddie Mac, Fannie Mae, and the Federal Home Loan Bank. I'm not sure whose comments did those were Olga. Okay.
Yes, those are me, both of them. And I understand we may not be in the right spot, but I do feel that we need to bring it to the forefront, at least start discussing it and bringing it to the larger commission. My first point is we need more affordable housing. Doesn't necessarily have to be new construction. It doesn't necessarily even have to be Section 8. But I did some math, and you have to make, we all know this, you have to make 3 times the amount, even for rent. Somebody that makes $57,000 can afford $1,500. So how are people that are making $15 an hour, $16 an hour able to afford anything? So I want to know what can be done about this. Like, can we do manufactured housing? Can we build? The city owns a lot of land and a lot of homes. What can we do to increase this? And I don't have all the answers, of course, but we need to bring it to the forefront. And I think there's many ways. Maybe like we've started a pilot with the tiny homes, manufactured homes. Does this require rezoning depending on the property? And I'm just kind of spitting it all out here because I don't feel that I have many people that bring up these same things that I keep bringing up. And I would like to see some movement on it, at least ideas. Does anybody have any comments about it? I see a lot of like confusion.
I mean, I think everyone agrees with the concept of needing more housing, and it is in the details or the specifics of how we get there that's so hard and complicated. Right. The city has some thoughts around mobile home rehab and some of that seemed pretty challenging to perform on. So I am curious, some of this to me is when you get into the details of how something is supposed to be executed is when it ends up falling apart. And so I would not disagree with anything you're saying. I think the challenge is, how do we get there? How do we get there quickly? I don't think manufactured homes, there's still delays and challenges with that. But I'm not necessarily the best one to speak up. I think there's other, maybe I did very, very late, and I apologize, but I sent Jim and Shay some thoughts around my ideas around maybe, a bit about potentially being able to help. And it's really designed, how do we speed up the process to make? And I think we have to deregulate in a lot of ways and find ways for there to be security. So maybe that's, partnering with nonprofits that can be mission driven to do this with developers that then have more of a fast pass through the process. Maybe there's opportunity to explore there, but I will stop talking because I feel like I'm the newest to the group, so I don't have a lot of experience.
Right. I would like to hear from some of with David, Betty, Maggie. What are your thoughts on this? Thank you, David.
Well, I've long had I have many mottos. And one of my mottos is, if affordable housing were easy, smart people would do it.
Sure.
It's not easy. It's tough.
Something needs to be done.
It's tough for a lot of reasons. Jim and I talked earlier about some of them, but it's a time-consuming process. You've got to find land. You've got to find land that's zoned. You've got to construction. Just because your rents are low, or if you're doing for sale, you're hoping to sell it at a low price point, that doesn't mean it costs you any less to build it. One of the things that has driven me crazy for decades is when people talk about low-cost housing. It isn't low-cost housing; it's low-income housing.
Right.
It cost me the same to build for people at 30% of AMI as it would cost HSL to build for market rate. Doesn't cost me any less, particularly when ADOH makes me put in the same amenities that go into a lot of market rate properties. So, you know, I wish I could tell you there were a magic bullet, but there isn't. Right. If there were, I'd work a lot. I wouldn't work as hard, and I'd make a lot more money. So I mean, it's.
If I could speak, you know, this is Betty. I think, you know, it is a problem, and it's just becoming worse and worse because of the cost for one, and just the wages aren't there to keep up with the price of housing right now. And so the natural occurring housing is no more, right? It's just not there anymore. So we're concentrating a lot on the rental market, and I understand why, because people can't afford to buy. But that doesn't make it right. And we've been in this rodeo before the recession. Maggie, you and I worked on some incredible, Marcos, you know, we've done it before for home ownership. And I think that, you know, we're forgetting that there are mechanisms, you know, to building affordable housing or housing affordability, however you want to say it. Well, you don't build affordable housing, as David very eloquently put it. You have to subsidize affordable housing. Right. Just as you do rental, you have to do the same for home ownership. And I think that that's the piece that I see missing from this group. And that's the piece that I see missing even from the county's group is, you know, we're not focusing on any kind of home ownership opportunity other than the land trust. And I think the land trust is probably the best model out there, but you can't, that's one tool, and we should have that as a tool, but we need other tools. And so I don't think we're really thinking through, or, you know, we're not thinking out of the box for home ownership development. And I don't know why, you know, it's, you know, it's about subsidy. It's about the home funds. It's about the bond funds, you know, all those things that we used to use in the past for building single family housing, you know, and it's not easy, and it's not for everybody, you know, everybody has their niche. And I think that you should stick to your niche, and those that are that can build single family residence for home ownership, we need to seek them out. We need to provide them incentives, even if it is the bigger developers. You know, I mean, you know, Olga talked about 3 times your income is what they're asking for. That was a California thing, I remember, and now it's here. You know, where they're not even going to rent to you or lease to you unless you're making 3 times the income to support that rent or lease or mortgage even. I mean, 30% has always been, you know, for the mortgage, but by my house, they're building DR Horton homes, and they're building them. It's a whole development. And it's all for lease. And so
and a person that makes $57,000 cannot even afford a 2-bedroom there. They start at $1,900.
Yeah, So Olga called the sales agent and got the information on that. But yeah, so even if we had Section 8 vouchers, right, because it's lease, shouldn't they be able to accept Section 8 vouchers if we can go to the 120% of median income?
They're not accepting any vouchers.
Which is what HUD is at this point allowing us to do. So, you know, it's also about these developers that are not even wanting to play in the sandbox with us. You know, we have to find ways of incentivizing them as well, you know. So it's not easy, but it can be done, just like anything else can be done if we all put our heads together and really concentrate on that. And, you know, the fact that the city has also brought up this new impact fee waiver, and I didn't listen to the meeting. How did I'm thinking it's still on the table, right? For the extending the impact fees.
Yeah,
I think the fact that that's available for small developers, that's a huge incentive, huge. So we just got to start educating people, you know, smaller developers, even owner build developers. You know, you talk about the ADUs. Well, what if somebody has a whole lot next to them that it's sitting empty, you know, and they haven't wanted to build because of the impact of the fees that go into building. So yeah, I know I'm rambling on and on, but I'm glad that Olga brought up this subject, because I think it's a subject that's been missing from this conversation, from this group. You know, we've been focusing on the rental, which, you know, there's nothing wrong with that, but we also have the home ownership side that we're not dealing with at all.
So Betty, not to interrupt or jump, but I want to just jump in here for a second. I'm trying to keep track of the points that we're making, that the individuals are making. So the 3 points I wrote down for you are to allocate funds for single-family home ownership, for example, home funds. Provide incentives for larger home builders to allocate some homes as affordable, and to extend the impact fee waiver to the single-family for sale affordable homes. Does that capture it?
And then just try to work with small builders that own lots and encourage them to build for housing affordability, which would then reduce their impact fee waivers, you know, if they commit to it under this new program. You know, that's a great incentive.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
I see, Marcos, you've had your hand up for a while.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, you know what? One of the problems is that we just don't have the amount of federal subsidy that we need. And you know, locally, you know, we've had an infusion of relief funding from various bills. The Treasury funds I'm thinking of most, and I've seen a lot of other jurisdictions that have used those funds to support not only new home ownership, but I'm wanting to add in existing homeowners who need help keeping their homes, you know, access to, you know, some financing and or grants, affordable financing, or grants for home improvements, as well as supporting home buyers. And, you know, the problem is there's just not enough subsidy to go around. And when you're looking at subsidizing home buyers in this market, you know, you're talking subsidies for both buyers, you know, in the range of $20,000 and up per buyer, as well as subsidies for developers to help subsidize the construction. And it's just very costly. Bond programs can help, but for home ownership, it's very difficult unless the laws are changed. And lobbying the state legislature right now for these types of things are very iffy, and you know, I don't think we can count on quick changes there at that end. But and that's also the challenge with providing fee waivers. The county used to provide roadway impact fee waivers for low-income property owners that were going to develop a single-family home that would be their primary residence. And we can't do that anymore without setting aside general funds to offset the cost of that waiver. And that is a big, big hurdle for both the city and the county, any jurisdiction in this state. And it's just sad that our state legislature has gone to the extent that it has gone to preempt local communities from having access to these tools. You know, and if we can get more home builders involved, I heard that the Home Builder Alliance was responsible for preempting local communities from waiving impact fees, and which is ironic to me, you know, because it could help their industry. So I just don't understand it. And, you know, maybe if you know, David Godlewski and SABA members could shed more insight as to why their organizations and other organizations like that have lobbied for those changes at the, you know, with the state legislature. But yeah, and it just makes it very difficult. You know, and communities that are allocating treasury funds from ARPA, those monies are gonna go away. And so it's a temporary fix. I think we need to look for permanent solutions to this problem, and maybe even put more effort into lobbying the legislature for some of these changes, even though it might take a few years. It's going to take us a few years to build out of this shortage. So I'll leave it at that for the sake of time.
Hey, Marcos, can I ask you a quick question? You keyed something that when you talked about fee waivers, is that specifically about wastewater fees and water meter fees?
It's specific to impact fees relative to development.
What about the wastewater and the water meter fees? Because I can tell you, Pima County has some of the highest wastewater fees in the state, by a lot, actually. They're like double most jurisdictions.
Right. You know, I'm assuming that if we wanted to waive those fees, that the statute that I'm, you know, referencing would possibly apply. And I don't know that we would waive those fees. You know, just I think we'd be in the same predicament we are with the impact fees, but I'm not sure. I mean, that's something I think we should definitely look into. And if there's, you know, that could be some areas that the city and county may have some leeway if that state statute does not apply to the, you know, these utility specific charges that could potentially be discounted or waived for low-income housing. But and I don't know all the nuances. You know, I think it would be, but I think it would be good. And I think you bring up a good point, and maybe we need to pull in our counterparts with, you know, county sewer and city water, and, you know, get more information and details as to how those fees are structured and what they may know about their ability to provide any relief for affordable housing.
I know that the Arizona Housing Coalition was lobbying at the state level to change some of those requirements so that local jurisdictions could waive fees without having to supplement from the general fund. I'm going to reach out to Joan and just see if I can get an update on what's going on with that.
Really, really helpful. And, you know,
yeah,
I know that there are some things that could be done at the county level. For example, like, you know, I recall having a meeting with our former development services director, now deputy county administrator, Carmine, and, you know, he meeting with one affordable housing developer that was developing a project in the city. he suggested that we might be able to, that the county might be able to provide some additional time for the developer to pay some of those sewer connection fees, kind of like you know, a zero interest loan, if you would, and allowing fees to be paid at the back end of the development rather than the front end of the development. If, you know, something like that might help, I don't know, but that seemed to be something that was within the realm of our jurisdiction and being able to at least provide time. Sometimes time is money, and that, I don't know if that could help. You know.
Yeah, I really like that idea. I would love to see that as a future agenda item, to get the water, gas, and, you know, wastewater, gas, and elect TP, get them all here. Because you know, that's one of the first things, you know, us with the land trust, we're looking at these same set of issues for these secondary dwelling units, because it's coming up. Because if it's considered a secondary dwelling, you have to pay all the fees, even if you're only building under 500 square feet. And so that those costs exponentially, your water meter fee is pretty much the same. It's going to be $5,000+ whether you're building 500 square feet or whether you're building 5,000 square feet. So, you know, it's crazy how much those fees really do matter, and they matter and scale very differently as well. And so I've been wanting to have those same conversations with their department. And I think the time could be really cool because, you know, especially if you're building something as a rental, you know, that gives you the time to be, you know, to offset up to like $10,000 to $20,000 right off the gate, that you're not having to just come up with that money right up front. So, you know, I think those are all really interesting ideas, and we should definitely pursue them. I see Maggie, your hand is up, and then Joe.
Hi, everyone. Sorry I was late. I was starting writing my notes because I'm like all over the place, but I think we're under the topic of developing affordable housing. And so, I mean, it sounds like, you know, we need funding for subsidies, obviously zoning, land use changes, reducing fees and process to make it easier. But I'm also thinking, you know, the way the land trust was started is we actually, during the housing crisis, we were able to purchase existing homes, rehab them, and sell them to low and moderate income households. So I'm wondering if in addition to developing, we kind of convert, I guess, existing homes to affordable units by just, you know, providing subsidies, maybe even, you know, making them permanently affordable under a community land trust model. And that's, you know, I know that overall we need more, you know, inventory, we need more houses to be built, but we also need affordability, and, you know, subsidies obviously is what happens there. One of the other things that I know that we're dealing with is that oftentimes the subsidies that, you know, that are in existence, like home funds right now, you know, for a new construction to use the home funds as down payment assistance for a new construction, it's the maximum new home purchase price is $243,000. Well, you know, our community land trust house, that just the last one that sold, was $243,000, and that was the leasehold value. So it's, you know, already reduced, and so, you know, those numbers have to go up, you know, if we're going to be assisting anybody with home ownership, at least, you know, or with subsidies. So I don't know. There's just, it's daunting. But that's just my piece of it, is that I feel like the reality of our situation is, you know, not matched by our government and the limits that they pose on some of these subsidies too. That's it.
Okay, I think I saw Joe, then Olga, then Jim.
Yeah, few things. I know we were talking about the rental rates and what 30% is. The last Poverty and Urban Stress report, I saw household income at $41,625. 30% a month is $1,001, which we know is near what market rate is right now. And I think I'm never going to argue against building more affordable housing, but I keep every meeting somebody's going to say, "Oh, it's a housing shortage," and I'm going to remind us, like the dashboard, the gap analysis. I will quote: "Data suggests there's sufficient housing supply in the region. It also suggests that there's not enough affordable units available for households with the lowest annual income." So we're dealing with specific affordable housing shortage, not we're just short on units. With regards to zoning changes, I think there's opportunity. I think we have to be careful. I think the Alliance for Housing Justice has a really good framework. I'm happy to share that with anybody if you're interested in it. It's basically around removing exclusionary zoning, but doing that with a lens towards equity. And finally, as we've talked about, I think of land trust as kind of a version of community controlled housing. Same with public housing. One thing I haven't heard much about in any meetings is housing co-ops. I don't know if the city has any programs to educate about those, but I think it's something that's worth looking into, and I would be interested in learning more about for sure. Thank you.
Did somebody say I can go next? I'm sorry, I didn't hear it.
Yeah, you're up, Olga. Go
Hey, I'm having sorry about that. So I wanted to talk about co-op really quick, Joe. Are you talking for rental or are you talking for affordability and for purchase? In purchase, sorry.
I am open-minded.
Okay, just to let you know, for a co-op, it's really hard to get a regular type of residential loan, a home loan, a mortgage. They really don't lend on those. So that's just something to think about. But second, I don't know if we're on the second part of the agenda about this, since we're already talking about home ownership. Okay, I'll wait then. That's okay. Go ahead, Tim.
Jim?
Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna share my screen if that's okay. Ooh. Here. Make sure I pick the right thing. Okay. Can you guys see this?
Yes.
Okay. So just kind of looping us back to what we talked about last week was one of the goals of the subcommittee is to provide a list of recommendations to mayor and council on what we can do as a city to incentivize more affordable housing here. So Marianne Bierling, who's not with us today, but she sent an email last week, and these are the items. So I'm just going to kind of walk through these. Megan sent an email as well. Dave Wall and I came up with some things, and I've been trying to keep notes as we're talking through these things. So I thought it'd be good if we could just kind of go through at a high level and talk about this is everything we've come up with. And one of the things I would really like to hear is are there other ideas that are not on this list that we need to explore? And then we'll publish this list after the meeting, and I think at our next meeting, maybe start to try to prioritize what we think are the biggest things that we could do, the things that are going to provide the most impact. So starting with Marianne, she said change the zoning or waive requirements for more modern development, such as no setbacks from sidewalks, which is also a focus of more walkable cities. Help bring more funds into the community by using size, recognition, and power to bring national funding to the whole community. Start an accelerated fund or site inventory that focuses on affordable housing. For example, use city funds, non-federal, or from the above ideas to hold land to be purchased at below market at a later date. I don't really understand that, but bring back the housing trust fund funded by city taxes or a portion of costs paid by commercial developers for commercial housing and developments. Continue to develop a housing roadmap that articulates clear housing objectives. So from Megan, reducing impact fees, create a fast track through the, I think this is through the plan review process, look at certifying nonprofits for any housing development. Need to increase the speed of the process. Look at planners designated to affordable housing. Land donations, find ways to provide preference to nonprofits who can partner with developers, look at incentives. So what Dave and I talked about earlier today was zoning flexibility. As an example, density bonus, allow, I'm not sure there's the right number, 20% more units on affordable housing projects. Parking count waivers and reductions. Reimbursement of the city sales tax that would then be applied for off-site improvements. We've done that before on different projects. Project-based vouchers if available, we already do that. Expedited review through development services. Flexibility of design requirements. And this is, as an example, is the number of different materials required on the exterior of the building. Look for new partnerships, public-private partnerships between CEHD and other developers. Real estate tax exemptions. This would be from the county, and that's a big ask. That's a huge ask, but no, the worst they can do is say no. Work with other public entities to repurpose buildings into affordable housing projects. So for example, old TUSD schools. I'm starting to see a lot more inquiries about hotels and things like that, where the building is made for one use and converting it into a different use. You could leverage some of the existing infrastructure to reduce the costs. As a question, can we put a measure on the ballot for an affordable housing general obligation bond? And then can we lobby TEP to reduce electrical meter fees for affordable? And then these are all of the things I think that have been discussed so far to date. So I'm happy to keep working on this list, and if there's any other things, we'll add it to it and then distribute it to the team as soon as we're done.
Yeah, real quick, Jim, I just added a few more in the chat, just more specific, but a lot of them were, some of them were repeats of what's already been listed. David, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I want to respond to something that was said earlier about there not being, and I put in the chat, but I can give you more documentation, about there not being a housing shortage. It's an affordability shortage, not a housing shortage. That's simply not true for the rental market. And I will give you some evidence of that. This is from a company called Reese, it's Moody's Analytics. They do national market analysis. This is for Metro Tucson for the fourth quarter of 2021. And if you look down here, you'll see a 3.8% vacancy rate for Metro Tucson. Anything below 5% is considered to be a tight market. This indicates that there is indeed a shortage of rental units, market rate, affordable, you name it. And as people are bidding up rent, and that causes rents to be bid up. So I'm just going to challenge the concept that there's not a rental housing shortage. It's not just, affordability is obviously critical, but there is a shortage across the board.
So Dave, are you saying that if we do things that will encourage, that will make it easier for market rate developers, eventually that'll trickle down to making projects more affordable for everybody, or what's?
Well, I was simply responding to a statement that was made earlier. I wasn't drawing any conclusions from it. It was stated that there is not an overall housing shortage, and I was simply pointing out not true. But, you know, microeconomics, if I can go back to my graduate studies, I can vaguely remember that if you increase the supply, then prices will equilibrate. So if you have more housing, then it's a pretty then prices theoretically won't come down probably, but they won't rise as much. Microeconomic theory is going to tell you, but I wasn't planning to get highfalutin and all that. I was just responding to a statement that I believe to be factually incorrect.
Can I intervene here? I think I really want to steer the conversation back to solutions. First, I also want to say and give a hand to like everybody in this room, because pretty much everyone in this room has been doing this a really long time and has worked so hard to increase supply on all sides. You know, Picklet with home ownership, David with rentals, Jim with, you know, you've done a little bit of both. I mean, so again, I think we have an amazing group of people here at the table, and I really just I want to go back to that list that Jim you brought up, and I'm wondering, a few of us mentioned subsidy and tax, potentially like levying taxes. Who can we get in the room who can tell us what we can and cannot do tax wise? I mean, can we look at construction sales tax? Can we look at an Airbnb? What can we do on a city level, right, that we're not going to be as hindered as a state level? And do we have any thoughts on that aspect?
I think we could invite somebody from our business services that specializes and knows a lot more about those financial structures. We could invite them to our next meeting.
I would.
Well, when we built, sorry, I can just tell you, when we built the Marist College, the city agreed to basically take whatever construction sales taxes were generated and reimburse for off-site improvements. So we had to extend a water line through a city block. There was a bunch of off-site sidewalks, curbs. We had to replace half the public street. So, you know, all of those costs in total were about $200,000. And I think that the sales tax reimbursement from the city was about $180,000. So it was a pretty big deal for that project. So there is a precedent of that being done, but it's been done on a project by project basis.
Yeah, I think it would just be great to start lining these different other city departments up and getting them in the room with us to see where, you know, again, just see where we can and can't, you know, what we can and can't play with or potentially move. Because again, the other key area I keep thinking about, you know, this all goes back to the soft costs, right, for development. So how we can reduce and make it, you know, those fees, they just add up really quickly. And then when you're doing them per unit, it's just crazy. I mean, you're in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. So it's, you know, I think that's a great, like, hopefully easier fruit to low hanging fruit to pick.
I'm going to put Daniela and Jason on the spot. I don't know if they're both on or just Jason. But I'd like to hear from them on if there's other things that they can think of that we should be looking at in terms of ways to make some of these things work.
Sure. Hey, Jim, thanks. Yeah, I'm here with Daniela. You know, as Owen Metz says, with Dominion, you know, or affordable housing is nothing more than a math problem. And I think we're talking about things that are pretty, I mean, can be thought of as complex, but they're really not. It all comes down to reducing expenses and increasing the sources. And you know, I think some of the ideas that we've heard are good ideas. Implementing them might be a little tougher than people think. I think the parking reduction would help. It would increase density. It would give us more bang for our buck with whatever land that we were purchasing. I think whatever fees that the cities can waive, it's a reduction in expenses. I think the sales tax would be a huge relief in terms of the construction sales tax. That would go a long way.
Connection fees.
Yeah, impact fees, connection fees, all the things that the city has control over, or maybe that they don't have direct control over, but any reduction in expenses is going to help a project. Any increase in subsidy, you know, getting higher rents somehow, some way, increases your leverage. These are not complicated concepts. They're difficult to implement, and they're especially difficult when you're going to carve out a little niche market, which people think affordable housing is, and say, you guys get all the special treatment. That's going to be an uphill climb. It isn't, I mean, it is hard to do affordable housing because you're building basically the same product, but you're flipping the sources. And that's not easy. But I don't think it's as complicated as we're all making it sound. It's pretty simple. Reduce the expenses, increase the sources. That's it.
So is there anybody else that has any other thoughts or ideas that we want to get put on this list before we move to the next agenda item?
All right, thank you, David. David said he's leaving.
So just, I guess, is this about developing new affordable units or just adding affordable units? Because I think, I know we're talking a lot about the development, but I'm wondering about the conversion to affordable units, which then just requires subsidies, right? So I don't know, I'm just kind of thinking that, are we just, focusing just on developing, whether rental or home ownership or whatever? Is it easier and faster and, more imminent to just say, hey, this house, let's buy it, let's put some subsidy in it, and let's make it affordable? Is that feasible? Is it something that we want to discuss in this group, or is that, I mean, like I said,
add to the list.
Yeah, that's the way the land trust, we have now 100 and the land trust model, I feel like I'm always like touting my own horn, but it's a really cool model. And it really, if people haven't looked at it, and we can provide some data on the permanent affordability of these units, like we have 89 plus, we just home ownership units, 89 plus, we just built 5, so we have 94, but those 94 homes have benefited, I don't even know the number, but over 125 families with the same subsidy, with no additional subsidy. And so it's a model that is pretty good, it works. And so in the long run, it makes sense from a policy standpoint, and especially in these times when we've got less and less subsidies going towards affordable housing as a kind of a maneuver, a tactic, a policy, whatever we want to call
it. Sarah, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to chime in regarding that. And Maggie, I think that's a really good point, because development is one section of affordable housing, building new units. But Coming from Colorado, we had gotten into figuring out how to sort of shift existing units back into affordability. And, you know, I think I see this as we're looking at all the different tools that we can add to the tool belt to keep making housing more affordable to that continuum, you know, of people in our community. The town of Vail in Colorado started the buy down program, which was where, because they looked at unit, like how much it costs to build an affordable housing unit versus how much it costs to buy an open market unit and sell it for a lower cost. So they would call it a buy down. And that was an option that they used some of their housing money from. A lot of those towns in Colorado had, you know, taxes and sales tax that were housing related. So they had a pot of money that they were able to utilize to help subsidize for development, but also to start this buy down program. So instead of paying, you know, $500,000 for building a new unit, their subsidy was only like, you know, $150,000 to get that unit into a 80 to 120% AMI type of person. So buy downs are definitely, you know, a tool in that belt, the land trust model, you know, and I think that's part of my new job, is to help to determine all of those different things and start creating that programming that we can start to utilize with the support of you guys and coming up with more of those ideas as well. So I think that that's a really good point, that it's about development, getting new units out there, but also, you know, getting, you know, the existing housing stock kind of more evened out.
Yeah, and then it just, to me, when you start going there, it comes down to the subsidy, and we just don't have, and that was one of my main goals of trying to be on this committee, was how do we get a dedicated, like people mentioned in that list of items, action items, you know, reinstating the housing trust fund and getting some sort of funding source, some sort of tax. I mean, it could be anything. It could be the most randomest, like little sliver of a cent, but across, you know, our population, it all adds up, you know. And I just don't know, you know, again, I think we need to start reaching out to those other city departments to figure out, is there some excess somewhere that we could be funneling in, you know, money for the support and growth of affordable housing? Because again, those home dollars, I mean, it's just, when you look at it, it's just pennies. I mean, it's really just pennies in the bucket compared to the need. And the general obligation bond, I think that one's we've mentioned it several times. I feel like that to me would be top of the list, something we could do sooner than later, something we could partner with the county on. And then, and I would like to see in that bond programming, like some of that funding go towards, again, some of this programming that you're mentioning, Sarah. It sounds exciting. Marcos?
Yes, just to tag on to your geo bond proposal, I think that's a great idea. I think I may have mentioned before that Saba's director and then the head of the manufactured housing division both have reached out and said they feel that majority of their members would be willing to support another bond issue. The problem for home ownership is the 30-year requirement that is currently attached to the statute. So I think along with that, there should be a lobbying effort to amend that statute so that there is a different standard for home ownership set for, so for right now, there's just one standard that's required, and that's a 30-year restriction, a minimum 30-year restriction for all housing that would fall under that statute. And so that's a big hurdle for home ownership. It's not a problem for the land trust, for the community land trust, because they provide, you know, affordability in perpetuity. But if we want to open the bond program up to other builders and developers, we need to change that statute. And, you know, the solution would be to mirror HUD's long-term affordability requirements for home ownership, which max out at 15 years. And it would be either 5, 10, or 15-year restriction, depending on the amount of subsidy, direct subsidy that the home buyer receives. And, you know, 10 to 15-year restrictions are much more palatable for lenders and developers and home buyers alike. So I will just leave it at that. And it is ARS 11-251.1.
I think also, in addition to the argument for more general obligation bonds, is that the exemption of property taxes. Besides all of the stuff that Marcos said, I think that you also have to either receive LIHTC money or GEO bonds. I know that's how we got our two rental projects got property tax exemptions because of the GEO bonds. They're small projects, so of course not a LIHTC project. So that's another plus.
Well, I think this was great. So Shay, I'm going to email this to you now. We can keep pushing forward, unless there's anything else anyone wants to add.
I would like to add the next item that we're going to discuss, if you don't mind, Jim, please.
Okay.
So Olga, did you want to move on to the next agenda item? Is that what you're talking about?
When we're ready to move on, sure.
I'm sorry, what was that?
When we are ready to move on to that item, of course, I'm ready when you guys are. Yeah. So I had a really good meeting with Liz Morales about maybe a week and a half ago. And I had asked her about the city possibly purchasing land for smaller little developments. And this is how this idea came up after our meeting. And she said that the city owns different little pieces of land as well as homes that they're not sure what to do with yet. And so my idea is to have a collaboration with large investors. We did this back in the day too when I worked for Chicanos por la Causa, and using, like I said on the agenda, Freddie Mac, Fannie Mae, possibly Federal Home Loan Bank, larger banks, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, coming all together and possibly doing small either rehabs or smaller little developments that are only affordable. And I understand that the cost could be a thing, but if we talk about the zoning, we talk about these incentives, how can we put that into play? How can we make that a recommendation for mayor and council? We did also discuss that they have a Section 8 home ownership program, and they're looking into working with BCCLT, where basically this voucher, instead of going towards rent, goes towards home ownership. And so there's a lot of homes out there. She mentioned around 250 that we may be able to help these people that are on vouchers purchase these homes with that program. And so I am thinking, like, what can we do to come together and market this to these investors, these larger investors, to do these little developments, not a huge one, not just one subdivision, just little developments. So I'd like to just bring that to the table and research it some more. You know, the city owns land. They don't know what to do with some of it. And there's also a lot of homes that could be rehabbed. Because I straight up said, can we purchase and the city buy land for more affordable? She's like, we already have it. So what's stopping us from going to the next step and trying to use these ideas that we're already using to build little projects? So that's what I wanted to discuss in further detail. If anything, just to put it on the record.
The only thought I have, Olga, is it's still not increasing the subsidies, so we're just kind of shuffling from one basket to the other. So it pulls. I mean, it's still the allotment is the allotment, correct, for the city for the vouchers, and so then you pull from rent to home ownership, which I'm not saying I'm opposed to. I think it's definitely something that we should be understanding and looking at ways that maybe that's used in the community. But the only thing that I struggle with is that what we really need is increase. And so it's really hard when it's just shifting from one area to the other, not adding to.
No, I think it should be land trust, that program, you know, down payment. It's not just one thing. I think, like we discussed, it should be a little bit of everything that we have. Use all of our resources.
And I just meant specifically around like Section 8 and how that stuff works, right, and how that funding actually trickles down and works.
Sure.
But if they're also having difficulty finding rentals, it may be a viable option then to buy the house. I think specifically it was to buy the house that they're in, because they're also, city wants to kind of offload some of these,
right?
What I'm understanding. So, I mean, that's another, I think it's a viable option, especially for people who can't find, well, in that case, it would be purchasing the home that they're in. So I don't know. I mean, so yeah.
Thank you.
The benefit would be that you're helping a family become a homeowner, and that family is going to pay property taxes, where right now the city's houses are not taxed. So it would increase the property tax base, as well as give the family more stability and security. And it's a win-win when you work with moderate income, low to moderate income families and help them to become homeowners.
And building wealth, you know.
Yeah, and it's a public benefit, you know. That's definitely a public benefit, and that's one of the selling points for the bond. If you talk about the GO bond, general obligation bonds, you have to make the case for the funds being used for a public benefit, you know, meaning all the voters have to benefit from this, whatever we do. And so, you know, making the case for housing to be a public benefit, for home ownership to be a public benefit, for safe and decent housing that's sustainable and affordable is a public benefit. So when we're out there marketing for this GO bond, that's how it has to be sold and marketed.
Shay, just want to see, so it sounds like Jim's going to send this email to you and you'll have this list to bring back to the full commission. We were thinking maybe it would be good to, at this point, take a motion, at least on the parking reduction component, so that we could ask the main committee to support and discuss that and take a position on that next week, so that we can have that ready to go, knowing that we have a lot of things still being worked out for a full, to-do list, but maybe that could be the item that comes out of this, with that you're going to continue working on that list of action items and thoughts for what we can do, but then maybe making a motion for moving the parking support at the main committee forward to the mayor and council.
So what would you like the motion to say?
That the Affordable Housing Subcommittee recommends the Commission on Equitable Housing to support the effort of reducing parking by right and supports the Planning Commission's recommendation to Mayor and Council.
Okay, and so moved. I'll make the motion.
Okay.
But just to be clear on what the recommendation is we're not. It's on an ad hoc basis. It's not. If it's affordable, you get the reduction. They have the ability to if it's affordable, but they don't have to. Is that correct?
I think the intent by right.
I lost you for a second. Can you say that again?
Yeah, I'm sorry, my internet got cut out. The intent right now is to just direct staff to look at what the best code change would be. And it would most likely be like a by right blanket, not case by case basis. But the intent now is just to direct staff to look at what the best code change would be for affordable housing by right parking reductions.
Okay. Madam Chair, there's a motion.
So what is the press so moved?
Does somebody want to second it? Olga or Shay?
Yeah. Or I think I was the first, so I think I need a second.
So we have a motion and seconded, and if there's any other discussion, we can just put it to vote. You can do a roll call.
Okay. So now we have the motion moved. Can we get the roll call? All those in favor, just say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
So Olga's raising your hand and Shay raised your hand. Okay, so yeah, we have the 3 voting members who voted to make the motion go forward. So I will.
So the ex officio are not able to vote yet, or
correct.
There's a move for that, right? All right, I wasn't sure about that yet.
Yeah,
correct.
Do we have an update on that? And did we present expanding the committee members to? Did that get presented to Mayor and Council?
It is not yet. I believe it's in with the clerk's office, but I can check.
Okay, thanks. So I think we're through almost all the agenda. The last one I have here is the housing affordability strategy for Tucson HAST implementation. Did we already discuss this, Anne? Or is this?
Yeah, I think it's just a placeholder since we are trying to crank out a lot of things on that HAST plan. And just, I think Betty brought it up earlier. Yes, Mayor and Council did pass the impact fee subsidy expansion. And when it went back to them, it actually included more conditions that they asked for in terms of the policy. So here's what changed. The city code changed to allow both nonprofits and for-profits to be eligible. And then there's the separate policy document. We need to link to that on the new one on our website. The policy document, I bring it up because that can change again, depending on, that's something that administratively Liz could change, but realistically, we want to make sure Mayor and Council support any of the changes. So that can be changed more easily than the city code. And so the big changes based on what Mayor and Council directed us to do, it's now you can receive an impact fee waiver up for units that are up to 100% area median income. There's a change that instead of it being 15 years affordability commitment, it's now 20-year affordability commitment. A big change, and this is definitely something that will impact in a positive way affordable housing projects. A few years back, when it became apparent that it's not actually a waiver, but it's a subsidy, there was the big shift from the public-private ratio. And so there were some challenges to that, and Mayor and Council were asking, how do we make affordable housing more attractive? And so we did away with for the public-private ratio for now, and just said any project is eligible up to $150,000 if there's budget to approve up to that. And I think that's a target that's probably going to move. If we start seeing a lot more projects come in, I think we'll have to lower that cap. But for now, we figure, given the situation we're in, try to make it more attractive. So those are the big changes. So it was approved about 2 weeks ago. It takes 30 days to take effect. So technically any projects that submit for the subsidy in the future will come in under those policy changes. So that's all.
Okay, thank you, Anne. I think we got plenty of items for our future meetings. So I will move to adjourn unless anyone else had anything else pressing. Can I get a second? The motion to adjourn.
I second.
All right, thank you. So moved. We'll see you all, I think, next week for the larger meeting. Thank you, everyone.
Hi, everyone.
Good job, Shay. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Good evening.